Hey there, dear YouTube audience, and welcome to the second installment of GIANTainment Sapphic book review. Now, this is a little bit of a difference because, as you know, the reason why I'm doing this every time I basically complete a book is because I did my ranking last year for the very first time, because last year is actually when I started, I was about to say writing, that's a whole different endeavor, reading books again, and obviously only Sapphic books. If you want to know why specifically those, you can check that in the video. Where I reviewed like all of the, or ranked basically all of the ones that I've started reading last year, and also in the first episode of this podcast kind of thing, where I go into a little bit more detail. Don't want to do it every single time for the people that already know. So the reason why I'm doing this basically monthly is I was thinking, or I realized, I mean, the video was about like 3 hours that I did last year for every single book. But I think like I can go into a little bit more detail after I finish the book, because the book is obviously still fresh in my memory. Now for, I did that obviously last time for Delilah Green Doesn't Care. As when I recorded that, that was basically a couple of hours after I finished the book. Now, for this one, Scaredy Cat is actually the book that I've read and completed first this year. And then I had the idea, wait, actually I can do this monthly, so, you know, that's why technically the second book that I finished this year was Delilah Green Doesn't Care. But it's the first episode of this one, and then the second one is like this episode right now was actually for the first book that I've completed this year, so not as fresh in my memory as it should, but still fresh enough. For this one, obviously Delilah Green Doesn't Care is held on a really high pedestal, really well known. When you go into Reddit and ask for specific books, like a must-read kind of thing, then one of those books next to, you know, J, Wrong Number, Right Woman, which was my second favorite book of 2025. People also mention Delilah Green Doesn't Care, and that is why that's like part of the trilogy, the Bright Falls trilogy, and I'm reading the other ones too, but I want to take a little bit of a break before I go into the next one, because also Delilah Green Doesn't Care apparently is the best one in the trilogy, but it's besides the point. But those are the things. There are books obviously that are must-reads, and then there are books that are a little bit more niche. And I think the book today that you already see in the title is actually a book that, after I finished Vengeance Planning for Amateurs, which was ranked as my third favorite book of 2025, if I remember correctly. It could have also been the second one, actually. Or second or third. I loved it just as much as Jay's Wrong Number, Right Woman. Both books were awesome, but Vengeance Planning for Amateurs was like the best comedy book. Like, it had some, obviously, like the main premise is like, because it's written, because the book is basically written by Lee Winter, and her whole thing is obviously Ice Queen characters, and that is literally that book. But what makes it so special is that the comedy in this one. You know, obviously every Sapphic romance book has, to a certain degree, like parts that make you chuckle a little bit, but nothing that you do outright literally gets like a response. Probably from you and also from me. That's rarely the case, you know. It's like, oh, you know, it's kind of clever, you know, kind of fun wordplay. The first thing that comes to mind when I started reading Sapphic books was obviously from the first book that I've read, which was from Meryl Wilsner, Mistakes Were Made. Where it's like jokes that you can literally only make in Sapphic books. It was like, what was it? Curiosity killed the cat, and there was much pussy being killed last night or something like that. So, you know, stuff like that. That's a chuckle. That's a clever little wordplay. You know, also me, you know, being a fan of old school rap, obviously, you know, kudos to that. But yeah, nothing that really gets like an outright response from me. And Vengeance Planning for Amateurs was the book that literally was able to do that. And I was like searching around for books like that, and I was asking people around. One actually recommended a book to me. Let me check that real quick. I also ranked that higher than I should have for last year. Let me check that out real quick. I don't even think I put it in my favorite shelf here. I'm on my Goodreads page. I think it was About Last Night or something. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, About Last Night. People were comparing, like, you know, when you like Vengeance Planning for Amateurs, you know, About Last Night is basically the book for you, which is absolute bullshit. It's nothing like it. But today, going on a tangent, I'm going into a book that literally, if you've read Vengeance Planning for Amateurs, you want a Sapphic romance book that literally gets an audible chuckle out of you, I'm pretty sure about that, with an interesting premise, super sweet romance arc obviously, then there is none better, so far, than Scaredy Cat by Robin Alexander. I'm going into the cover in a bit, but let's first read the text on the book back so we get like a general, so we know the general premise of the book. Blake Taylor isn't the Queen of Horror, but she's certainly a member of the royal court. Blake has made a career out of writing novels that make her readers want to leave the lights on at night. What Blake's fans and very few people realize is that Blake Taylor is scared of her own shadow and just about everything else. After a family intervention, a case of writer's block, and the desire to be free of the confines of fear, she leaves New York and rents a house in Cypress Glade, Louisiana. Quinn Scott, a local, is hired by Blake's agent to be a tour guide of sorts for her most famous and troublesome client. The job seems simple for $1,000 a month, but as she gets to know Blake, it's anything but easy. Birds, squirrels, broccoli, and dogs are fearsome creatures. Find a comfortable spot, visit Cypress Glade, and watch as these two women learn to conquer fears that don't always go bump in the night. Be warned, a few feathers may fly. So I read that book back text before I was actually before I was like, you know, basically purchasing the book. And if it weren't for Goodreads and the genre where you see like romance, humor, LGBTQ, lesbian romance, you wouldn't really think that it's a Sapphic romance novel, you know? And not only that, not only because of the book back text, but also because of the fucking cover. I mean, look at this. This is weird and fucking zany. But the thing is, if you actually take a look at Robin Alexander's book, she, by the way, writes a lot of fucking... Actually also was born in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, so she knows the area, obviously. If you look at just like her portfolio, not all of them, but I guess the books that fall into that category of zany and like comedy, basically, like Pitifully Ugly, I think is one of them. That actually sparked my curiosity when I just saw how the cover looks, because it looked pretty similar to this one. Then it's weird, and it literally, like, it doesn't this want, like, if you just see this, doesn't it spark your curiosity, and you would be like, man, I want to know what the fuck does this looks so fucking weird. And I mean, that's literally a good thing. Like, I've never seen anything as ugly as this cover, and I mean it in the best possible way. So this one, obviously, as it mentioned, features a really interesting premise. We have Blake Taylor. She writes like this insane, dark horror books, like a novelist, obviously. And yeah, as it says, like after a writer's blockade, she gets to go into a house in Louisiana, and her agent basically says like, okay, she has to see the area because, you know, she can also implement it in the book and stuff like that. And the interesting thing about that, you wouldn't think, like, the premise overall for Blake's character is fucking amazing. It's a horror novelist that is scared of everything. Like, she is scared of fucking birds. She's scared to literally leave the house. Like, there's at the beginning, obviously I'm gonna show you some of my favorite quotes from the book. But there's this one point, let me see right here if I can find that. Scaredy Cats, there we go. Yeah, for instance, like she basically goes out, I think alone for the first time, or actually at the first dare basically is going onto the porch. But she basically talks herself some courage when she actually goes out, because she's scared of a particular bird that, you know, that basically, like, you know, gives her the side eye, as she says. And one thing right here is like, stare all you want, you try to pick me and I'll tear your beak off. I'm not fooled by your pretty red plumage, you're a killer. No, I won't pay you off in seeds. Like that's how basically she basically gets herself amped up to actually just take a step outside of her house. We also have this. Why does that damn bird keep staring at me every time I look out the window? I think it's foaming at the beak. There's like that's the thing, like, you know, the whole premise of she writes these dark horror books but is afraid of everything is just extremely fucking funny. Like there's obviously what Quinn is trying to do when she actually figures out how scared Blake is. Like she goes to the house, she's supposed to take care of her, to show her the town basically, and she's like Blake doesn't even open the door. She's like, okay, can you give me your ID? And then, you know, basically like, yeah, well, okay, height matches, but I think you weigh a little bit more. Age seems to be about correct. Like, when Quinn enters the house, she notices that there is basically like a security tape around the, what was it? I think it was around the dresser or something. And she was like, yeah, I heard like weird noises coming from it. And then she like peeks around and the thing is like, yeah, that's probably because because the fucking dresser is in front of the door to the basement. And then she was like, yeah, well, I fucking heard noises from there too. That's why I pushed the fucking cupboard there in front of the fucking door to the basement and then put security tape around her to make sure nothing actually comes through. And the thing is, like, you know, it progressively gets, like, Blake progressively gets, like, braver and braver. What Quinn basically is doing, she basically she puts out some dares, so she isn't afraid of anything anymore. There's one point where she becomes a little bit closer to Quinn and is like, oh, no, I'm freaking out, there's a fucking coyote in my backyard. And it's like, coyotes? There are no coyotes in there. And then she pauses and then it's like, does it wear a collar? And she was like, yes. I was like, yeah, that's not a coyote, that's actually the neighbor's dog. And then there's a part where Quinn, like, she knows the dog, obviously, you know, plays around with it a little bit, and then it's like, you know, she's like, Blake, you know, just come out at your own speed, you know, I'm not pushing you, you know, just whenever you feel comfortable, you know, come towards it, maybe you can pet it also. And then she just, like, Quinn sits on the porch, you know, plays with the dog a little bit. She doesn't look behind her, but Blake comes out of the house. It's like, you know, that book, I read that 3 months ago, but there are just some parts that just stuck in my head because it's so funny. Where she doesn't turn around. And she's just like, you know, Blake, you're doing good. I'm really proud of it that you're coming. Put the skillet down. It's just like in one sentence. And it's absolutely goddamn funny. And also there's a point where they drive off into the city and it's gonna take a little while to get to the destination that Quinn wants to bring her to. And she's like, well, you know, she says to Blake basically, you know, you can take a nap. And she's like, no, what if I sink down a little bit? You have to brake, and then the belt on the seat, forgot how it's called, security belt or something like that, just decapitates me. And, you know, that's the thing. It comes from, you know, her just taking a step outside of her porch to going from her house to Quinn's car, going through the city, and then basically also going onto the porch on herself when Quinn isn't there. So the entire thing, and that's also the interesting thing, like, you would obviously think that the whole thing is like, Blake is just like a scared, obviously that's what the book is called, Scaredy Cat. It's just like a scaredy cat that is totally afraid and doesn't have any courage at all. But the fact that she ends up, I think it was like, it wasn't like bungee jumping, but it was like they were at a park. Like, she's also obviously afraid of heights. They were at a park where they swing on some vines, I think. So she actually also does that, and then she swears off heavily Blake afterwards because that's how she copes with stress, which is also funny. It goes all the way to that. And before, you have a scene where they take a tour on, I think it was like some historic landmarks or something like that in town, and a squirrel is sort of running towards them, but in front of them is basically a tree, so it wanted to go on the tree obviously, but it ran like towards them, so Blake was fucking freaking out, climbed on top, like, Quinn is like pretty small, Blake is pretty small, so Blake basically crawled up on Quinn's back and then just, you know, hugged her and then fell forwards and then they were basically face to face. You know, it's just funny situations like that. And the thing, obviously, you know, as they grow closer together, you have Quinn and Blake realizing that there is more than just like this thing where Quinn is there to show her around town and be her quote-unquote bodyguard to a certain extent. There's obviously more. And the thing that I really also enjoyed about this book, that there's like no angst whatsoever. You would think that, you know, when, like, I think Blake doesn't even know that Quinn literally does it. I guess she just should. Yeah, of course she should, because her agent told her, but okay, never mind then, just fucking scratch that. But there's no angst of, well, a little bit, you know, there's a little bit of angst, because we also find out later why Blake acts the way she is, because it's sort of enabled by her mother, not going into too much detail. And there's also a little bit of backstory with Quinn and her mother that ends super sweet in the end, with the help, obviously, of Quinn. There's also a funny situation later, actually, how we find out that Blake actually talked to Quinn's mother later on, and that's reveal is also kind of, it's serious, obviously, but Robin Alexander also sprinkled in a little bit of fun there. What Robin Alexander also did really well is describing like the whole entire town, because obviously this is like a small village in Louisiana, so a little bit backwater kind of territory, and also all the side characters were cool. Quinn, her brother, obviously married a woman, and they are like heavy fans of Blake. Also interesting about that is that Quinn and Blake later decide, or somewhere down the line, decide to watch like one of Blake's movies. Obviously her books also and they also made movies out of them, but she didn't have any creative control over that, so they just basically used it as a source material, but they changed some stuff, and she noticed that. And the thing that she's like, she's absolutely not intimidated by horror movies at all. Quinn is absolutely shaken after the movie, and she's like, yeah, well, we can turn it off, you know, it's not that good. And it's like, oh yeah, Quinn is like, yeah, good idea, let's turn that off. Yeah, but Blake absolutely was like, nah, this is not good, like, this is shit, you know, stuff like that, like. But then she's fucking afraid of fucking birds, and she actually has a full-on fight against I think it was against a chicken later on, actually, in in Quinn's SUV. And also later decides or learns how to drive. And the funny thing also there is that she also never took a taxi because she was afraid that, well, I can't remember exactly anymore. Like, Quinn was like, how do you get around? And then it was obviously because of her agent, but she can't take a taxi because she wouldn't know how to find her way back or something like that. Like, or she's like it's like this thing, you know, when you go into your head and it's like, okay, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then you just escalate it at a specific point. And for her, that was also like, what if I don't have enough money to make it back, and then they just drop me off, and then I can't find my way back, and then I'm in debt and stuff like that. It's just like goes off the fucking rail so quick. But for Blake, that makes absolutely fucking sense. You know, like every single point of the escalation, basically. Then obviously, as I mentioned, that's the main focal point for Blake facing her fears. Quinn also having a specific fear that I'm not going into detail because, you know, don't want to spoiler obviously too much. I try to make this as spoiler free as possible. The only thing I'm gonna say, and that's like a mainstay for every book that I read, it has to have an HEA, a happily ever after, which this book absolutely fucking nails. But yeah, like obviously some side plots. We have that with Quinn. It's told from, if I remember, from mostly Quinn's perspective, but we also have like later on, Quinn obviously stays overnight for more than the purpose to just protect quote unquote Blake. That's at first that's basically their excuse, but they both know that's kind of bullshit. It's more than that. Backstory for Blake, not only because of what's with her sister and with her mother and how she basically became the way she is. That is also explained, as well as something that I didn't anticipate, like a former partner that she has. Both characters in this book, which is also a big plus for this one, are both Both are lesbians, not bisexual. It's full-on lesbian romance you get right here. Both characters. Both with a little bit of a history in terms of like partners, and that's also what comes into play later on, specifically for Quinn. But also for Blake, something that I didn't anticipate. So when that is revealed, that's a little bit of a like, oh, okay, didn't expect that. That's pretty okay. And also one funny thing, I'm gonna put that in the video. Obviously, I'm gonna put that also in when I go over every single book this year. There are two things that that stuck with me. It's like that was like sort of at the end of the book, and it says right here that is Blake. "I need to tell you something," she said breathlessly. Quinn's mind immediately began to try to prepare her for what she might hear. Physical deformities, disease. Blake was a man. Her gaze immediately dropped to the front of Blake's jeans. And then also, that's the way, that's how you fucking write comedy gold. This is stuck in my head, it's so good. So this is Blake. Like, she has like this little moment where she basically tries to explain something to Quinn. Sort of like a serious moment, but not too serious. It was like, I think they were like walking down at night during the park. Blake completely, basically, you know, is a little more fearless. And yeah, she has like this monologue. And then it just literally goes to, what is that? What point is point that? It's a moth. They don't buy it. As a response from Quinn. And this is how you write comedy, you know? She just goes on a monologue and then just like, what is that? What is that? I can just physically fucking see that in front of my mind and just hear it in my head. It's so fucking funny. Also then later on, as they realize that there is more between Quinn and Blake, like the other characters, like her mother comes to visit with her agent, with Blake's sister as well. And then they also notice that she basically adopted also already the slang of the town. And I mean, yeah, I guess I can go straight to the rating. I mean, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars on Goodreads. Because I don't see, like, if I don't see anything wrong, and if I just literally enjoyed my time with the book, then, yeah, that's 5 out of 5 stars. The book that I read before that was, yeah, I mentioned it here, actually, was Make the Seasons Bright, aka Miscommunication, the book. Absolutely. Which is interesting, because that was the first one that I've read. I think I mentioned that before, but just like a little side tangent there. I read Make the Seasons Bright before Delilah Green Doesn't Care, but it was in reverse. Like, Delilah Green Doesn't Care was Ashley Herron Blake's debut novel, and then, like, obviously the Bright Falls trilogy, and then Make the Season Bright. So you just would think that, you know, she gets better by the time, but literally that book wasn't, like, it was nowhere near fucking Delilah Green Doesn't Care. That was just fucking gold. But yeah, I came out of that, so maybe that also elevated the fucking my fucking premise of this specific book a little bit more, because I came out of a book that wasn't really that good, and then I get to something that is this fucking enjoyable. Absolutely, man. This was this is a book that is like not really well known in the whole fucking Sapphic readings hemisphere. If you just ask for like if you just ask for like any book that is nice to read when people are in a slump, then you get like the usual stuff, you know, like feel good books. And I think this book actually should be in that whole hemisphere. Like, you have this book, No Angst. It's literally similar, I would say, to Wrong Number, Right Woman by Jay. It's just like no angst. It's absolutely enjoyable. Everything is dandy. There's a little bit of angst sprinkled in there, but nothing that basically is like, okay, I need to read like 2-3 more chapters because I don't want to end on a sad note before I go to bed. That's something that happens with the book that I'm having, that I'm reading at the moment, but we get into that probably next week or something like that when I finished it. Maybe later down this week when I'm recording this, but overall, on Goodreads, for instance, I gave the story a 5 out of 5. Absolutely. Characters are 5 out of 5. There is character progression, obviously, for the main characters. We get like the background stuff with Quinn, and what happens when Blake isn't around her is amazing. Same thing for Blake. Like, you would think that she's like the not scariest, the one that is like the most scary in the book, but she actually tackles her fears. And that's also what Quinn basically also praises about Blake in the end, because she is actually not scared to face her fears. She actually does it. And then you have Quinn, who also has some fears, which Blake actually also, like, she has like, what is your fear? And then she's like, gas prices. Obviously, it wasn't like real. But yeah, she also Blake also encourages Quinn then later on to tackle her fears. Which actually, like, the last part, I can tell you that much, is Blake going on a ghost hunt. So that was also funny, and you would think there is like some problem, because then her agent calls and like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, she has this whole, that's the thing, she has this whole persona of like the queen of horror, and she has these pictures of Blake basically where she's like laying on the bed and is like drenched in blood basically, but people don't know that she's scared of her own shadow. And then basically a picture comes out from the ghost hunting where she pees her own pants basically because she's scared of something. They also have an EVP session that gets revealed later on, which is pretty cool. So, but yeah, that's what I mean, you know, like a character, like character development for both characters, absolutely spot on. Absolutely. Spice is there, but not much. Yeah, I gave the Spice, The Spice is basically a 2 out of 5. There is a little bit, but that's not like the main point. Main point is character development. Main point is them basically discovering their love for each other. Love each other right there. Rereadability, I gave that a 4 out of 5. I can definitely see myself reading that again because there are so many points. It's a feel-good book, number one. And number two, there's just so many points that I would like to revisit again. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's an absolute fun book. That's definitely a 5 out of 5. Absolutely. This goes in the top 3 of this year. And the problem that I'm having at the moment, actually, with the books that I'm reading is all 3 books are candidates for first rank. Now, actually, it's bullshit. I have my number 1 already, but after long consideration, but I get into that when I finish that book. But this one is in the top 3. I don't know how many books I'm gonna be reading this year. Might be more, might be less than last year. We'll see. Depends on how many pages each book has. This one, for instance, is 229 pages, so that's average, I would say. A little bit less than The Lilac Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Heron Blake. And I think also less from the book that I'm reading at the moment, which by my favorite writer, but yeah, we get to that soon. So, yeah, I think that wraps it up, actually. With that being said, you know, if you ever want to read a book that is just like wholesome, you know, that's a nice, comfortable read, I think that fits it best. If you'd like vengeance planning for amateurs and the comedy in that, this book is for you. If you like a book with low angst, like Wrong Number, Right Woman, this book is for you. If you like a book that doesn't have too much spice, but actually just like more character building, and also explores like it's a slow burn basically, like how they slowly grow closer and closer together to the point of the inevitable. This is definitely the book for you. Can definitely recommend this. This one should be up there in the higher echelon of books that people actually recommend. I would say must read. You know, it's just fun. You know, it's comedy gold. It's serious when it's serious. It's never too serious, however. Yeah, absolute comfortable read, man. That is Scaredy Cat by Robin Alexander. As I mentioned, there are more books. She's mainly writes, or only writes, I guess, Sapphic romance books. Maybe there are some stuff that is just like, I think it's actually, that's mostly it. Let me check that real quick. I have the Goodreads profile right here. Let me check that. Doesn't specifically state it here, but yeah, there. An avid reader of lesbian fiction. Yeah, so obviously that's also what she writes mostly. Again, like the book covers, like, just look them up. Pitifully Ugly, maybe I'm gonna put them up on screen if I don't forget it, or Just Jory, for instance. Both lesbian romance and also both humor and lesbian fiction, obviously. Yeah, actually Pitifully Ugly is one, like, just the book back thing. sounded really interesting, and also what people say about the characters. And just look at the covers and then you see, okay, that's a fucking Robin Alexander book because it's so goddamn weird. And again, you know, sparks your interest. And actually, yeah, Pitifully Ugly and both, Just Jory and Pitifully Ugly, the ones that I just checked here, are actually on my want-to-read list. There are a lot, actually, goddamn, that I put on. But yeah, my friends, again, Scaredy Cat, 5 out of 5. Definitely give this one a read. You won't miss it, I can tell you that much. Gets way too less praise and is a little bit too unknown, I feel, in the whole Sapphic reading community. There are books from her that are a little bit more serious. Those are the ones that got like more popular, which is a little bit of a shame because, you know, a book like this that is literally just like a comfy read and funny falls a little bit through the cracks. Also, it was released in 2013. That was a fucking while ago, and only 113 reviews. Make the change. Give this one a read. Again, as I mentioned, you won't miss it. I definitely fucking enjoyed my time with it. So, with that being said, my friends, that was the second installment of GIANTainment Sapphic book reviews. I guess that's how I call it. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'm gonna see you next time. And I can tell you the book that we're covering next time is gonna be... Ooh, I took my time with this book because goddamn I love it. I'm gonna tell you my favorite actor, sure. My favorite writer last year, first place, was Shifting Gears by Jess Forrester. And by all things, it seems Jess Forrester is gonna make first place again this year with Breaking from Frame. This is the next one that we're gonna be covering because I'm like 86% done with the book. And I guess I'm gonna read that or finish it today or tomorrow. So, with that being said, again, hope you enjoyed it, and I see you in the next one. We're gonna be covering Breaking from Frame by Jess Forrester. But Scaredy Cat by Robin Alexander, 5 out of 5, must read, I'd say. Give it a spin.